Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the It's Settled podcast. I'm your co-host, Andrea Mills, joined by my other co-host, Melissa Coleman.
Hey, everyone.
Today, we're joined by an awesome entrepreneur in the space of insurance and tech, James Benham. Welcome, James.
Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to be here.
Welcome to It's Settled, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of what happens after a serious injury.
Hear authentic, inspiring stories from those who face life-challenging injuries, their loved ones, and industry professionals working to make a difference.
I'm Andrea Mills, Chief Client Officer at Ametros.
And I'm Melissa Coleman, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Ametros.
Now, it's settled. Let's dive into the episode. Welcome, James, to the podcast. We're so excited to have you.
I am so fired up to be here. I love being a guest on somebody else's podcast. It is a welcome change and a welcome relief, and I'm excited to be chatting with y'all.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited to hear about your entrepreneurial spirit and how you've been able to build businesses over time and starting in college, but also want to hear a little bit about what you're doing in the insurance space and get some leadership tips and tricks from you as well. So with that, we'd love to hear about how you started your journey in business.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun, the origin story, right? And whenever you have a movie, you always want to know the origin story. It's hard when the movie starts in the middle of the story and you don't understand how people got there. And it's always fun to tell mine and hear other people's. This one started in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I was born and raised. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad built and sold 4 different companies, all in manufacturing, device manufacturing, Teflon manufacturing. And so I grew up walking the manufacturing room floor with him, and started my own lawn business when I was 12, and then I started a technology consulting business when I was 16 back in 1995, teaching people how to get on the internet and setting their computers up to access the internet, because it was actually hard back then to do dial-up and all the things you had to do to connect. And just always loved being in business, chasing sales. Of course, I love technology just as much. And then I went to the world's finest institute of higher education, Texas A&M University, and surrounded myself with a bunch of other great entrepreneurs, and ended up doing an internship with a really great accounting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I was an auditor. I got a degree in accounting, and I got a master's in MIS, and then I wrote software kind of all through college and all through high school. Taught myself a lot. Also had an amazing high school computer science teacher named Ron Dupuy, who taught me college-level computer science all through high school. And so ended up with 2 degrees from A&M, undergrad and master's in business, and the 2 internships with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I decided that really wasn't my path, and so went to my best friend from high school, who was from Argentina, Sebastian, and I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, let's start a business. Let's do it." I wanted my dad to be a passive partner because he still had his own Teflon company to run, and I wanted Sebastian to be my chief operating officer, and so we did it. Out of the dorm room at first. Actually, the first office was dorm 2 at Texas A&M, and then we went from that to my apartment, and then we got an office. 9/11 happened, and that was tough because Sebastian was from Argentina, and we couldn't get a work visa for him to stay after 9/11 because they pulled all the visas, and they made it hard to get work visas after 9/11. And so he went back to Argentina and started an office there for me in September of 2002, and I graduated in August of 2002, September of 2002, 23-year-old me was down there opening an international office, not knowing what to do or how to do it, but we figured it out along the way. And now, if you kind of fast forward 24 years, we have about 280 employees around the world. A lot of them in Argentina, South America, also as well in South Africa. Got some in Europe, and then, obviously here in Texas, in the greatest state on earth, Texas. Look, I love Texas. Sorry, I just can't help it. I was not born and raised here, but I got here as fast as I could, and I realized this is where I was supposed to be. And Texas A&M are kind of really integral into my entrepreneur journey, because my first 8 clients were all Aggies, and then many more after that. And a lot of my staff have been Aggies, and A&M has a ferocious alumni network. I mean, ferocious. Side note, today I'm wearing a shirt for Texas Southern University, which is the school I'm on the board of regents of. The governor of Texas appointed me to the board of regents there 5 years ago, and then reappointed me 3 years ago. And so I serve them, obviously in a volunteer board of regents capacity. And so I love higher ed. I love that part of Texas as well. And that we've just continued to build this business. The mothership being called JBK.
Mhm.
We had a subsidiary in construction tech that had heavy ties to insurance called SmartBid. We had heavy ties to the sub default insurance space, builder's risk insurance, and surety bonds. And we sold that in 2018, kept the people, and built a work comp first claims and policy platform for carriers, TPAs, PBMs, MGAs, et cetera, to run off of. And so, what you got today is a roughly 280 person organization dedicated to custom software development for insurance organizations and a core platform for smaller TPAs, MGAs, and self-insured groups and funds in the work comp space. That's that's kind of the whole journey. We bootstrapped the whole way. We never raised money, no
Mhm.
debt, no financing, no investors, no rounds, all bootstrapped. We had obviously a bootstrapped exit, which is super fun. And then we when we started the new thing, we bootstrapped and self-funded that as well. So we I don't I'm an investor actually in some VC funds, but I don't take those funds myself, and so I think that's really something that's important to our business DNA as a company is that we live inside of our means, and we're super duper capital efficient with how we build our software and how we distribute our software.
Yeah, that's really cool. Since we were recently acquired by a bank and not more private equity funds, I end up having that conversation a lot with people. Like, what's the difference? Or, you know, do you like the bank? Do you prefer private equity? And I think it really fits whatever your business needs are. And it sounds like, being self-funded is really the path that you all have taken. And love that that's part of your culture and DNA.
It is, capital efficiency is actually hard being super, especially in technology, in an industry where it's really dominated by how big your next Series A, B, C is going to be on a raise. Um, we just don't think that way. We care about one primary thing, and that is our customer happy.
Mhm.
We don't have to keep our board happy because I am the board. We don't have to keep the investors happy. There are no investors. We don't have to keep the banks happy. There's no debt. We have no covenants we have to keep on bank loans, and so it is really a singular obsession with making our client happy, and that has a big impact on how we build our technology, what we build on products, how we deliver our services, where we focus our time and attention, and we're really obsessed with insurance. We only work in insurance. We only build technology for insurance, and it's nice because you get to pick what you do in the morning, and your only boss is your client, and you pick great clients, and we have amazing customers that are all up and down the value spectrum in insurance. Whether it's we've multiple brokers we work for, we have multiple carriers, multiple TPAs, pharmacy benefit managers, ancillary service providers. Probably 70% of our business is in work comp, and so we have some really deep roots there, and it's just really fun to deep dive and not have to worry about what's your Series B valuation going to be? Are we going to down round? Do we have the new investors or our loan covenants coming up? And do we have to politic with people outside the organization? No, no, it's like this room. And of course, the scary downside of that is that there's no one there backing you up. So you make mistakes, it's all on you. Thankfully, we've gotten to a size and a customer base and employee base where we can solve a lot of big problems, and so it's been a really fun ride. We love it, and it does impact our culture very deeply.
Yeah, and I also like that you kind of leaned into your own college network to not only grow your staff, but clients and, working with your, college friend for all these years. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah,
Because we focus a lot about, kind of when we talk about leadership development, but also just how do you grow your career? And it is mostly based on your network and who do you know and who can you lean on for a mentorship question or just, hey, we want to grow our business. Do you have any resources that could help us do that?
yeah, it's great. A&M is incredible. It's the highest alumni giving percentage is at A&M. The biggest fundraising years ever in college history. A&M. Harvard has a bigger endowment, but I don't think for much longer because A&M is raising several hundred million to more than $1 billion a year. I mean, it's pretty wild how much money they're raising, but that's just an indicator of how tight the alumni network is. When you look at the business activity, and we've been on the Aggie 100, which is the 100 fastest Aggie-owned companies. We've been on that, I think, nine times now, and it's all based on growth rate. And you go in that room with 99 other Aggie entrepreneurs, and some of those businesses are hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And some of them are big oil and gas companies. It's wild to see that room when you look at the aggregate revenues of that room. It's pretty powerful, and it's also really powerful how much everybody's focused on helping each other out. So it's a really neat community. I'm thankful I got to be part of as a student, and I'm thankful to get to be part of as an alumni. I'm a mentor at A&M. I actually run a mentoring program for cadets that were in the ROTC core cadets that I was in, and it's a really rewarding interaction for very different than the way a lot of people feel about their school.
That's awesome. And speaking of mentorship, we have a lot of folks within the industry that listen to this podcast, and was curious what some of your top tips would be for insurance professionals that are looking to grow their careers.
Yeah, well, I've said whether it's grow your careers or grow your business, the tips are really similar. You do need to network, and what does that actually mean? Like in 2025, we use these words and we don't define them, and I think there's a disagreement between people, or at least in their head, on what it means. Like, what does that mean? What does networking mean? And I would say, first off, people need to get back in the office and go meet people. This virtual work at home stuff where you're never around your coworkers is for the birds. You are not going to build your career virtually. You're just not going to do it. So if you are unwilling to go into an office and spend time, go have lunch with people, if you're not willing to break bread with people, you're not going to. I mean, you have a chance at advancing your career, but it ain't going to happen that fast, because you're not going to build meaningful relationships over Zoom. It's just not going to happen. It just doesn't work. You'll become friends with people, you'll become acquaintances, but you're not going to develop. You can spend in one day in the office, even if you just go in one day a week, or you go to 1 week a month, you will develop more meaningful relationships than in months of virtual meetings. And so I think first, that's my first advice is don't be scared, or don't be averse to spending time with your coworkers, because that's a big part of your network. I still work with a lot of people that I worked with 20 years ago, and they people move on to different jobs, and and I look back at where, like with my clients, when they leave one company and go to another company, they bring me with them, because like, hey, I need you with me. That's happened dozens of times over the last 24 years. And I look back and say, well, where did that relationship really turn into a relationship and not just I know you, and it turned into, hey, we're friends. And that actually happened usually over meals, to be honest with you. It happened over breakfast, lunch, dinner, hangouts, going to conferences, and what happens, after hours when you just go to the drinks reception, you go to a dinner together. That's really where the acquaintance turned into a friend. And there's just a lot of people right now still abnormally averse because they like their life from working from home, and it's convenient, and no one's actually watching what they're doing, and they like that, and they lean into that, and they say, well, I can build a career like this. And I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. And so that's really my number one piece of advice is spend time with people in person, whether that's in the office, at a conference, at meetings, or whatever. If you have a virtual company with no offices, then go to the retreat, go to the conference with them and hang out. Don't just go to bed at 7 p.m., go to dinner. That's big. And then keep up with people. So I'm an animal on LinkedIn. If you're not connected to me, I'm like super duper active on LinkedIn. And that's because it's the best way I've ever seen of keeping up with people digitally, so you can track like when they change jobs, when they change positions, or when they move companies, or when they have a life event or something happens, you can stay in touch with them. Because if you don't formalize your network into like a system where you can keep up with people, it's really hard. So the third thing is I'd say keep a really good personal or work CRM. We use HubSpot. So everybody I meet, everybody I interact with, anybody I'm on a podcast with, they go on my CRM. and I tag them as, podcast guest, or I tag them as, met at a conference, tag them. And then I put them in a MSA, their mean statistical area, wherever they live. Whenever I travel a lot, right? So I travel, I don't know, over 100 days a year. I don't know. That's a lot. And when I go to a city, I'll go into my CRM and I'll look up who are all the people I've met who live in the city. And then I'll, depending on how much time I have, I'll hit up one or many of them to go to a meal. And that is by far the most successful networking tactic and career building tactic I have deployed, is just track who lives where. And when you're there, hit them up. People are so thankful that you remembered them and that you remembered they're in that city and that you want to take them out to lunch and you came to them. Like that's a great career builder, where you're building relationships, and, it's also super fun. Like there's a book called Never Eat Alone, and it's a whole, explanation of the title. The title's simple enough. Don't waste meals eaten by yourself. If you're out traveling, find out who you know in that city, take them out to lunch or dinner or breakfast, and get to know each other. That's it. It's really a lot simpler than I think people think this is really complicated, or they're an introvert, and I hate all the language we use today about this. It drains my social battery. I lose spoons. All this stuff that people say, but like I have seen introverts be better networkers than extroverts. To me, all being an introvert, and I'm not an introvert, I'm an extrovert, but I surround myself with a lot of introverts, and it just means that they just don't get charged. They don't get zazzed up. They don't get charged up as much as I do by the social interaction. Like, they have a limit on it, but they're often much better at this because they're better at zeroing in on somebody and focusing in and having a meaningful one-on-one interaction. They're not so distracted. And so I've actually seen introverts be better networkers than extroverts. And so I don't think that anybody is precluded from being a really voracious networker. Just one person might be better at working a party, but the other person is going to be better at developing meaningful networking relationships.
That's very interesting. And I'm curious, just thinking about what that sparked for me was how COVID has probably affected folks' networking opportunities and how that can be a real competitive advantage for candidates for jobs and things like that, moving forward. So that's incredibly interesting. Switching gears a little bit, I know that you have a book, Be Your Own VC. Can you share a little bit about what it's about and how it came to be?
Yeah, sure. Look, I had a really great event to 2018. We sold SmartBid. It was a software as a service. It was a SaaS software company, and did invitation to bid, plan distribution, subcontractor management, and the insurance intersect was it did pre-qualification for sub-default insurance, builder's risk policies, and for surety bonds. So it was great. We had 250,000 companies using it. It was awesome. A third of all commercial construction projects in North America bid for our platform. It was really cool, and I really enjoyed building it. It was the 5th product company that I built. The first 4 were failures, and the first 4 were not obviously egregious failures. They were learning opportunities to learn how to build a product company, and so I said, this is a good time to pause, to write all my lessons down, to formalize them into a book, and to share what I've learned. My favorite thing to do, and if you really want to, like, my favorite thing to do, and it is my retirement plan one day, is I love teaching. I love being in the classroom. I did 5 years as an adjunct professor at Texas A&M, and I guest lecture quite a bit there still. I love that more than anything. I was like, so a book is just a way of teaching people without being in the classroom with them. And so I said, let's just formalize this. If 10 people get something out of it, it's worth it. And either way, I'll have a record of everything I learned for the first, at that point, 17 years of running a business and having a successful, build it, sell it transaction. What it turned into was really kind of definitely about how to be capital efficient. Like, that's honestly the main theme of the book, is how to be capital efficient, how to be efficient with your money, so that you don't blow cash out the door before you can figure out what you have to do. Almost every business I've ever been involved in, and JBK is my mothership, but I built smart content, smart e-commerce, smart project, I had all these smart products, and then I had smart bid. And then I built Smart Compliance, which is a certificate of insurance tracking platform. And now Terra, and Terra has claims, policy, benchmarking. It's got all these, Connect has all these different product lines. But, they capital efficiency has to be the theme of all of this, right? Is how to build this in an efficient way so you don't put yourself out of business while you learn, because inevitably with all those businesses, there was a pivot. What you started out to do is not what you end up doing. And this applies to insurance in spades, because we have new ideas about new lines of business and new states. Generally, that's how insurance companies expand, right? Is they lines and states. Okay, we do property, now we're going to do auto. We do comp, now we're going to do GL. Now we do comp and GL, now we're going to do commercial property. It's lines and state expansion. And sometimes it's a good idea, and sometimes it's a terrible idea. And ideally, you're capital efficient enough and spending it up so that you don't go out of business in the process of expanding your company, right? So so definitely I gave my 10 rules around bootstrapped innovation and the bootstrapped mindset, which applies to any business, whether they're VC funded, private equity owned, public company, but then I actually spent a chapter talking about innovation in insurance. And I interviewed some really great CIOs that I've known over the years that I've worked with that I think are just brilliant people and who have innovated significantly in the insurance industry. So it did turn into a book about innovation, but just capital efficient innovation. There are billions and billions of dollars insurance companies spend every year on innovation initiatives that never go anywhere because they're not capital efficient. They don't have a process for innovation. I talk about that, I think, in chapter 7. Is I have a kind of a 5-step process for having a lab and having innovation that actually does something and it yields something. I mean, you have insurance companies right now going out and saying they're going to spend $1 billion on AI, $1 billion on AI. Like, okay, cool. What's your process for deploying the capital? What's your process for managing the projects? How are you going to measure success? Are you really going to, how are you going about doing this? And are you really solving? Here's the other thing that really gets my goat is they're spending all this money, but are they really solving the number one problem in their business? Like I'm super deep with my clients, especially my carriers and TPAs. Like I dive really deep into their operations because we end up running a lot of those operations with either our off-the-shelf software or the custom software. And I can tell you some of their biggest problems, we don't need AI to solve. They're not that complicated. So, I mean, they got big problems on claims, So we can go into that in another part of the conversation if you want, but that's really what the book is about. It's just capital efficient innovation. And, sometimes that's creating a new business. Sometimes that's just creating a new division of a existing insurance company.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I'd love to dive more into kind of what you are doing for your clients and how you think about that. And I loved how you started with, that's who you answer to. So how are you working with them to solve their real world problems? How are you getting down to that level where you can say, I can actually build this for you, or we have an out of the box solution for you?
That's a great question. Because if I go back and wind back each relationship to how it started, I met them at a conference or met them through a friend. I can't say that in the insurance industry, other than our certificate tracking software, which we do get a lot of leads and inbounds off of Google, that people look for, because that's a smaller spend, right? When you're just tracking COIs, and that's not a big purchase. But when you're talking about finding a company to help you engineer in-house product that's going to run the company, they're going to their friends and they're asking for referrals. That's what they're doing. Okay. Or they're working with people they already worked with. And, or they're going to a conference and they're meeting a speaker. That's, I speak at a lot. I've spoken at, I've keynoted like 500 conferences now. So they'll hear you at a conference and they'll call you. And then you always have the get to know you phase, because when you're invited in as a technologist to build enterprise solutions, you're also signing up to also help them with operational consulting. Inevitably, you're going to look at how efficient the process is they're automating. Because look, if you automate a really crappy process, you're just going to suck faster. right? Like you already suck. You're just going to accelerate that process. You know what I mean? Like it's just not, you don't want to do that. Like you don't want to achieve a bad result faster. You want to achieve the desired outcome. So you want to be efficient and effective. And achieving the desired outcome, like in a claims organization, is total lower cost of claims. In work comp, it's return to work faster. It's, it's restore the claimant, right? That's what it means to indemnify someone, is restore them to the original state they were in. And so that's the end goal. And if that end goal is not accomplished by the technology we're inputting, then what the heck are we doing? It's just an academic exercise. And so I think that's how every relationship starts, is they come to me and they say, James, I got a problem. My first big TPA landed. They said, James, I got a problem. We got a challenge around compliance and around licensing. And, we need to tie that to our claims so that, these people can only conduct these activities if they're licensed or active to do it. Cool. Small problem. Big problem. Actually, the implications are actually huge if you don't know insurance licensing. It's actually a really big problem. But that's where we started. And I had another carrier came to me, again, small problem. Hey, we have this small issue around connecting two systems together. And then the next issue is, hey, we need to benchmark claim performance against a data universe so we can see average cost per claim, number of claims, total incurred against a universe. Because right now we don't really know. We're just benchmarking against ourselves, and we don't really know how we compare against the cross-industry benchmark. In particular, when it's not against like NCCI data where you can pull a public data source. And so that's how it always starts, is it starts with, I need to solve one problem. And then it can go as far as you want it to go. When you're, again, JBK is an outsourced development and consulting business. And so we come in, we're not strat consultants, right? We're not McKinsey or Bain. We're not doing that strat work. And honestly, I think a lot of that strat work is going to go to AI, just to be really super honest. Because if you haven't used your AI tools as a strategic advisor or consultant, you're missing out on like the best advisor ever. It's so good. We dive into like real world problems and like really, and we take ownership for fixing it. And that's the difference between a strat consultant comes in, tells you what you think you should do, and then they step out. And that way, if it doesn't work out, they say, well, implementation was flawed. And I don't like that concept. And so we come in and actually help put our hands on it and do it. So we're primarily a company of engineers. I've been writing software since I was 11, started in middle school, went all the way through high school, just love it. So we're hands-on engineers. Of our 280, probably 200 of those people are engineers that build solutions. We like to actually build the solution and deliver it. And so I think that's really where the rubber hits the road, is you've got to come into an insurance company and actually not just tell them what they should do, then lay the path out and then go execute it for them. And that's then own the output, by the way, own the outcome. Is it on time? Is it on budget? And does the application performance function? That's like the super hard part. And so at this point, we manage, a lot of proprietary in-house legacy claims and policy administration systems. We do bolt-ons and integration components with all their ancillary platforms and applications. Twice I've even gone into where we actually help them lead their technology organizations and make the strategic high level decisions and direct all the company's technology acquisitions and activity. And so we'll go all the way up to that high of a level through usually the initial engagements, building a little custom point solution that they can't find on the market and they need it to run their business, because insurance is just infinitely complex. And there are often times that there's not a point solution that you can just sign up for in the App Store that'll solve your problem.
Yeah, and diving into that a little bit deeper, what do you think the challenges and/or opportunities, are there out there for modernizing the insurance processes?
There is so much low-hanging fruit. Like I'm in the middle of two really big engagements right now where I am in the weeds, you know what I mean? Like I'm crawling through the weeds of the insurance companies. Yeah. and I'm like, peering around the corners and there is so much low hanging fruit in insurance. It is insane. All right. Whether it's document indexing, we've armies of people that index documents in insurance, scanning mail rooms. Let's keep going. Communication automation. Average adjuster in some cases spends half of their day answering calls and questions from providers looking to know when they're going to get paid on the claim. Half. And that's half of their day they're not spending talking to claimants, which is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And look, do we need to talk about settlements?
Yes, we want them to.
Yeah, we want to talk about settlements. Like how and again, this is what one of the reasons I love. Of course, I love your company. I think you guys do a phenomenal job, and you have great leadership. And one of the things that's really interesting is, are we driving claims to settlements? Are we managing those settlements properly? Like this is the ultimate outcome. Isn't it the outcome? We want to settle this claim, get the person back to work, right? That's the and I think we get so busy in the minutia of like, okay, I have to log this note. Another really great example: summarizing medical records. Y'all know people do that manually still everywhere, all over the insurance industry.
Yes.
Do you know how easy it is to train AI to summarize a medical record? So it's really interesting. Like you can look at like adjuster activity and underwriter activity, and those are kind of, in my opinion, like the two workforce armies of people in insurance companies is adjusters and underwriters, right? Because like one is pricing and selling the policy, and of course you have distribution as well. Let's not leave out all the people that sell the stuff, but I'm just saying, outside of that, it's adjusters and underwriters, and they have so much stuff that they do that is super manual still. And AI is helping us solve some of it, like summarization. AI is really good at text summarization. But we can also just do workflow tools and portals where you can look up a bill payment status. Oh my gosh, you cut half of adjuster time out with that. And so it's really remarkable where the waste is. There's a great book I read called 2 Second Lean that is all about how to improve efficiency and eliminate waste. And it teaches the principles of lean that were really laid out in the Toyota Way, the book, like kind of the principal book on lean. At least for me, it's the principal book on lean. And it makes it more practical in day-to-day activity. And it's really fundamentally, hey, find 2-second improvements every day. Sometimes in insurance, though, you'll find an improvement that's hundreds of hours a day of improvement, because you're going to cut this one step out that they have to do every day that's super manual, that everyone just accepted as something you had to do as an adjuster or underwriter, that you don't. And AI is not always involved in the deployment. Or you don't have to get a really sophisticated AI model. It actually is remarkably simple. So I think that's, for me, the answer there is recognizing how much low-hanging fruit is. And sometimes they'll have these digital transformation projects, and I'm doing air quotes if we don't have a video on this part, but you're doing a digital transformation project, and like really the transformative thing might just be a feature that you need for your 80% of your employee base that might be adjusters.
As someone who works in marketing and is all about marketing automation, you are just speaking my language right now. Automate all those communications, automate all that stuff.
Yeah, you can. And I love marketing automation software. I'm super deep in HubSpot, so I'm a raging HubSpot fan.
Me too.
And yeah, oh yeah, HubSpot's like you're gonna pry HubSpot out of my dead cold hands. And as a software engineer, by the way, my goal is to own a product company that people feel that way about me, like they feel about HubSpot. Like I will literally, I will fight you if you try to take away HubSpot from me, because I have automated so much of our process, and it allows us to do the important thing, which is relationship building. And so many sales and marketing teams are tied up in non-relationship building activities because they don't have a really good automation platform. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Melissa just deployed an automation tool out of HubSpot recently, so you are really speaking to her heart.
Which tool did you put out?
So we just really built a fully automated flow to take those initial communications and automate them. So we would send emails that would go without response. So we took a lot of that workload off of the team. So yeah. definitely close to my heart. But
that's where it's at. I'm in HubSpot right now. I had before this interview, that's like one of the first apps that I have open every day. And I look at my deal pipeline, look at my marketing automation pipelines. I see what's going out. We have trickle campaigns and all that stuff. It's amazing. It's really remarkable.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of personal passions beyond marketing automation, I know off mic we've talked about your passion for aviation. So wanted to ask you a little bit about that and how that started and what you love about it.
Oh, I got to fly 3 hours yesterday. It was a good day. Any day in the air is a good day. I love flying. I have loved flying my whole life. My father was a pilot. He's still alive, but when you're in your 80s, it's very hard to pass the FAA medicals. And so he's no longer allowed to fly, which really makes me and him sad. My mother was a pilot. She's 81. My dad's 86. They're both thankfully still alive, but they love flying. I love flying. My mother's father, my grandfather, Jewel Griffin, was a Navy pilot in World War II. He was a submarine hunter in the South Pacific. And then he was a reconnaissance pilot over the USSR during the Cold War. Like, he had some cool jobs flying airplanes. And so I grew up in airplanes with both my parents both being in the cockpit, both flying, which is really neat to see that strong example of like strong female leadership out of my mother as well, who is a very quiet, shy, introverted person, but you put her in the left seat of an airplane, she turns into a different person. It's remarkable. And so when I was 19, I did my flight training, and I was a stupid 19-year-old, so I didn't take the test. And so I spent about 15 years just, being a passenger on commercial aviation. And honestly, I didn't have the time or money either, because I was building this company, and we bootstrapped it out of my dorm room. So we didn't exactly have a lot of capital. So, finally in 2017, I resumed the flight training, got the license in early 2018. And it's been 7 glorious, amazing, wonderful years of getting to pilot airplanes around the country, all over the country. I now have 2,200 flight hours, 1,600 takeoff and landings, and I have 7 ratings now. So I'm a single engine, a multi-engine instrument, so I can fly in the clouds. Then I got my single commercial multi, so I can fly in a commercial capacity. I got a commercial seaplane license, so I can fly, flying boats, and I have landed on Tampa Bay in an airplane, and it's just, and I got rated for some bigger planes as well, so I can fly some pretty big aircraft, and I really, there's something amazing about aviation. It forces you to learn how to make hard decisions quickly, because when you're the captain of something that's in the sky and things happen, whether it's weather events or mechanical events or a passenger emergency, all of which I've dealt with. I had a dog go into labor in a plane while I was flying. I had, that was fun. I've flown through clouds that weren't supposed to be severe, that ended up being severe, and almost shook my teeth out of my head. I've been tipped on my side at 40,000 feet, got tipped 45 degrees on my side, and had, I can been through some stuff. Now, mind you, that was like 1% of the time. 99% of the time in flying, it's just, my dad calls it hours of boredom surrounded by moments of sheer terror. Because really, the vast majority of flying is very routine, very mundane. And that way it's similar to driving. Most driving is very routine, very boring, very mundane until it's not. And then it gets really interesting really fast, and that's how aviation is. The difference in aviation is it's just a lot harder to pull over on the side of the road. And so you've got to really be a real captain, and you got to learn how to make hard decisions, and you've got to be good at math, physics, weather, mechanical engineering. You've really got to, the test and the coursework they put you through makes you a more useful human, because you have to learn all of these topics you never would have learned. And so I love it. I mean, and the community of pilots is incredible. I go to Oshkosh, Wisconsin every year for the annual Air Venture Conference. 700,000 people go to a field in Wisconsin every year to look at airplanes and watch them fly 7 days. It's the most amazing. It's the most amazing place on earth. And I just think it's a really cool way to push yourself and learn a lot of good life principles. And of course, the inconsequence too is that you can see the world. My father flew a small, and I still have this plane. I bought it from him when he lost his medical, a twin engine prop Piper Aztec. It's the model. It's right behind me. I still fly that plane. He flew that without GPS in 1987 using a compass across the Pacific Ocean to Sydney, Australia. So imagine crossing the Pacific Ocean with a compass and a map. And that's what he did. And that's just pretty amazing. And so aviation allows you to just do crazy stuff. And I think I know all the pilots in insurance, because I talk about being a pilot, so they kind of naturally hit me up and message me. I met a new one yesterday. And we always end up spending 60% of the time talking about aviation and 40% of the time talking about insurance.
I feel like there's some sort of connection there between taking those leaps of flying a plane and taking those entrepreneurial leaps too. Like there's something there, and like the courage it takes to do that.
Yeah, it does. Yes, 100%. There's connections there. I was listening to a podcast. I don't have the source material on this study, so I don't know if it's BS or not. You hear about studies every day, but evidently our brains grow the most when we decide to do something that we don't initially want to do. So I don't have the data or the stats. I was just listening to a podcast that was summarizing the results of a study. And it makes sense that our brains develop the most, that we develop the most when we set out to do something that we initially say no thank you to. And that tracks. That tracks with my life, and it tracks with the learning. I remember the first time I had to solo by myself in a plane, I almost peed my pants. Like legitimately, I was like, I'm gonna pee my pants. And because it is really, really scary, and everything in your brain is saying, I'm not ready for this. And your instructor is saying you are. You've done this 30 times with me, and I never touched the controls. And then when you're done, I have to say there is almost no other thing that is as euphoric as crossing the major milestones in aviation, because you're doing just crazy stuff. It's neat. The first time I crossed an ocean, that was really cool. Like when it was 2 hours over open water. That was it's the Gulf of America, but it's still an ocean. It's still hours of being over open water with no land in sight by yourself, no one else. That is ridiculously intimidating. Like and really intimidating. And by the way, the official charts now say Gulf of America. So I'm just saying I'm not trying to be political in that statement. I'm trying to follow the rules here. So it's really interesting. Like whenever you cross those hurdles, like you can feel something snap in your brain. Like, oh, I can do this now. That really changes you. I remember the first time I ran 12 miles in a day when I was in college, and I didn't understand I could do that. And like running for me was never the same after that, because I was like, oh, well, I've already pushed past the point I thought I had. And, so it's kind of the same way with aviation. There's not many things in our lives, by the way, that actually push us like that.
Very, very true.
Yeah. 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 That's why I like, endurance competitions are cool. When I was in college, I did a really, really, really hard endurance competition at the Naval Academy. And I honestly, if you would have told me what it entailed, I would have said, I'm going to die if I do that. and I did it, finished. It changes. Just something goes off in your brain after that. You're like, oh, okay, that was a synthetic limitation I imposed on my own brain. It has nothing to do with reality or my capacity. And it's a cool wall to cross.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like the button on that is like always push yourself, as far as you can. Always try something new. I think I said this at our all company meeting, but always say yes to those new opportunities, because that's where the growth is. So
it is. You can say yes. You can say yes, and you can qualify the yes a little bit, but why not? But look, let's be honest, right? There's a lot of people that don't view the world this way. They're just are. They're happy. They're at peace. They're comfortable, and their primary objective is protecting their level of comfort. They just they got to a life that's comfortable and good enough, and they're good. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way that. But the challenge is, if you take that mentality into a for-profit business enterprise, there is a problem with that. Because if you do that in business, in your personal life, you can live a very rewarding, fulfilling life, being content with what you have and being content with the way things are. I know this because I know a lot of people who do. But in business, if you do that, you will get destroyed, because someone's going to come take all of your cheese. They're going to say, huh, you look too comfortable. What do you do again? Got it. All right. And we've all seen those stories. And so that's the challenge, is like, you can have that attitude in personal life. Just don't bring it to work, because it doesn't work in capitalism. The only place that works is, I think, working for the government. because, they have a monopoly on running things.
Very true. So fly planes, try new things, and take those chances. Well,
Yeah, I think so. Why not? Innovate, be capital efficient. You don't have to go raise money for everything.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, James, for coming on our podcast today. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you about, all of your experience. And I think our listeners will really take away a lot of insights for their careers and their growth. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you. Appreciate the show and the willingness to talk about maybe non-traditional topics that can really matter to people. So if anybody wants more information on me, I do have a personal website at jamesbenham.com, and then my company JBK, the domain is jbknowledge.com. You can check that out and hit me up. I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best way to friend me and find me is on LinkedIn, and I'll answer any questions anybody has.
And they'll get added to your CRM.
Yeah, exactly. They will. Actually, they will. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to It's Settled, the Amitros podcast. For more information about Amitros, please visit our website at amitros.com. That's AMETROS.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear your feedback. Join us next time for more uplifting stories. Stay inspired and keep making a positive impact.